So one of the organizations I work with, classic sort of problem at this time, was in a situation where they were looking at the possibility of having to do quite deep layoffs. And the CEO, what she did was she did some calculations and showed that, well, if our sales campaign, our spring sales campaign, is 25% more successful than last year, we won't have to do any layoffs or at least as many layoffs. So she presents this to her top management team. And the way she described it to me, they started, one of them started yelling at her, they started freaking out, they started weirding out, and she said, what I realized was if I start like arguing with them, it's gonna get even worse. So what she did was she passed out stickies, hence the little sticky note, and she said, let's start writing down all the steps required to make it a successful campaign. She said, just give me like 15 minutes. And so they started writing down ideas, and pretty soon they had over 100 stickies, and what she did, it was sort of on a whiteboard, and she drew a line down the whiteboard. On the left side, she wrote easy. On the right side, she wrote hard, and had them sort the tasks into things that were easy to do and things that were hard to do. And for the rest of the meeting, they focused on what they were going to do the next couple weeks to achieve the easy goals. And she said what happened was it was fairly magical. They stopped freaking out. Within a couple of weeks, all of those easy goals, those stepping stones, were achieved. And then they turned their attention to the harder goals, and then they started making progress on those. Now, so research on the mum effect shows quite consistently that even when it's not their fault, when people deliver us bad news, we have a negative emotional reaction to them, and we like them less. So you sort of do the balance. People have an incentive not to give you bad news and an incentive to kiss up. And one of the most fascinating examples I've ever seen of this is this group. You were probably old enough to remember the Challenger explosion. So to figure out why the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, Rogers put together a commission, the famous Rogers Commission, and there's a fascinating story here. The late Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman kind of went rogue, and in fact he did figure out why it exploded, for example, and there's some great testimony to Congress some of you may have seen. But one of the things he did on the side as he was running around sort of pissing off Rogers wanted to reel him in, was he started talking to people all over NASA to figure out what was going on with NASA. And he asked this interesting question about a hypothetical that still hasn't happened, which is, what's the probability that the main shuttle engine would fail? And here's the numbers he came up with. The engineers, the people at the bottom, kind of knew what was going on. They estimated 1 in 200. Senior executives, 1 in 100,000. And you think about what happened as information goes up the hierarchy. To me, that's an illustration of this problem. But the stuff, if you look at research on downsizing, there's 3 hallmarks that are the characteristic of effective downsizing. One is that you give people as much predictability as possible so they know when things are coming. Another one is you explain to them why things are happening. The third thing is you give them as much control as they can over the process. And then the other thing you do is you look them in the eye and treat them with compassion. So prediction, understanding, control, and compassion. And those are really simple guidelines. And just to give you an example of the first one of the CEOs I was working with during early 2009, they were in a situation where they knew that they would probably have to do some layoffs, and they're coming to work every day freaking out. And so, but what the CEO, what he ended up doing was to tell people, so this was February, that yes, we are having financial problems, and we may have to do layoffs, but we promise you we won't do them until April if we do them. And the reason that was so powerful is people didn't come to work every day waiting for the hammer to drop. And then related to this, when they did the layoffs in April, and they did do a 10% layoff, what they told people was, we're doing a deep layoff now, and they gave them some numbers. And they said, we may have to do them again, but we won't do them till July at the earliest. And by the way, they didn't have to do any more layoffs. So the Christmas thing is harder to answer, but in terms of prediction, understanding, control, and compassion, I think